Experience, very good. Okay, that is what we are focusing on. As we just said now, we cannot count everything. Though we can count, but that is not giving the correct meaning for it sometime. So in order to understand what exactly mean, that we can, the better with a qualitative research approach we can. And there are no any pre-hypothesis. We call all our people are participants. We don't call us samples, or we don't call them. The better we call as participants, or sometime we can call them as a respondent. Okay, that is what are the things. So what are the certain characteristics? We believe in naturalistic inquiry. That means, for example, if we are trying to do a ethnography study. Have you heard about ethnography study, right? Yeah, ethnography studies are exploring the culture of a particular area or a population, right? So we are going and being with them and trying to understand their culture. So that means we are focusing on a naturalistic inquiry. Not we are conducting on a laboratory experiments. We are going to the patient, going to our participants and trying to collect our data. Okay, with a direct observation or maybe with an interview or any focus group discussion that we can use. Or we are using a purposeful sampling. What do you mean by purposeful sampling, and why we are using it? Any idea? Why it is purposefully we need to collect the sample for qualitative research?
We are going with the purpose because we wanted their culture or something. That is our purpose, to know about it.
Okay, that is it. Or that, okay, I do agree with that. Otherwise, what will happen if you are not purposefully selecting the sample or respondent? What if you are taking this group an example? At least one or two will be very vocal and they will share their experience in a very elaborative way. But imagine if those who are not able to, not at all talking much, I may not get a much rich data for my analysis. So I have a freedom. So I have purposefully selecting those. Okay, we cannot do this random selection and all. Better to select purposefully who fits our criteria. That is what the point. Okay, flexible. We are very flexible and we are iterative. What is the meaning? Iterative means we have always the freedom to going back the data and again check, and if there is any correction that we can do, and we can go back again to the participants and ask. That all the freedom we have. So we are flexible and we are iterative in nature, going back. Personal engagement or direct contact with the participants are also very essential in this. Qualitative data, sir, how it will be? It is a detailed, thick description and inquiry in depth. So when we collect the interview, the verbatims, that are very thick, rich data we are getting. A lot of verbatims we are getting. That's what they are saying. They are a detailed, thick description and inquiry in depth. Produces the findings that were not determined in advance. We do not have any hypothesis, as I told you before also, right? We are not predicting anything in advance. Whatever we are getting from the data, that we are presenting it. Okay, that is another thing. Researchers, we are actively or very involved into the data. So we have a very major role. So that's why sometimes we say that this is almost like a subjective. So the qualitative researchers are subjective. That researchers play a very important role in that they are immersed into it. For instance, the same example of that ethnography, the researcher will go to their particular culture and be with them, then try to understand their behavior and their patterns. Okay, that is that we have a very crucial role in this too. I will be focusing on one of my published work, that is on this article. This is we conducted with Sunidhi and other people in my department. As Sunidhi was one of our postgraduate student. We did a qualitative study that is on the lived-in experiences of COVID-19 positive individuals in India. It got published in Indian Journal of Psychiatry recently. So this is an example I want to quote. And I may be using some of the verbatim and some of the thematic network of this fine article in the coming slides too. So what was the study to understand? So the title says that I might catch this infection again. This time I will not survive. A qualitative study on the lived-in experiences and coping strategies of COVID-19 positive individuals in India. So we did a study on how was the experiences of being COVID-19 and what was the psychological impact and the coping strategies of those COVID-19 positive. victims. And we did around 13 participants purposefully selected and interviewed them, and we have analyzed the data, and total of 10 themes and 36 sub-themes were identified, and then that's what the main finding it says. Finally we are saying that COVID-19 positive individuals have a myriad of experiences from the transition of being positive finally getting free of infection, and their experiences with the illness sheds the gray where there's like stigma and the demand which demand immediate attention. That was the main findings we reported. Okay, so the main thing I will be focusing on thematic analysis. That is what I told you in the beginning also, right? So, but other than that, there are certain other approaches or the types we must know, that is like ethnography, grounded theory, phenomenology, case studies and narrative analysis also. I will just touch upon those points, but main focus will be on the thematic analysis. Anybody got any idea what is thematic analysis? What is this diagram is saying? We have a qualitative data, we are coding into the codes, and from the codes we are generating the themes. So that is the literal meaning if you know thematic analysis, the basics of thematic. One of the approaches that we use thematic analysis. So what are that? From the qualitative data, generation of initial code, and from that code we are moving into the development of the theme. In the previous study also I told you there were 10 main themes and 36 sub-themes were noted, right? Similarly, from the qualitative data we will initially code, then we will go into the theme. That is what the focus. So how we can do that is what we will understand with this from the coming slides. We are breaking down and organizing the rich data from the qualitative research by tagging individual observation and quotation with their specific codes, and from the specific codes to the theme. Okay, that is entirely we can call it as what? Thematic analysis. There are 6 steps which we commonly say that we involved in a thematic analysis, that include collection of the data, read, that means getting familiarization with the data after reading it, then start coding, again create a new code if there is there, and then we will from the code we will go for the themes, and we say that take a break, then we can do it again. So that's what in the beginning also it is an iterative process. We do it repeatedly, number of times that cycle. We have that freedom too in qualitative research, which we don't have it in the quantitative or in other type of research, right? So these are the main steps what we are generally doing with a thematic analysis. Starting with the code, then from the code we are going to the theme. Okay, so let's have some example of this. So where is it?
Here.
Okay. Here only?
Oh.
Okay. I told you after the data collection, we have to familiarize with the data. How we can familiarize with the data? The only thing what we do that, we read it again and again, the interview verbatims. If it is an interview, right? So we will familiarize with the data after the transcription. Transcription, all of you know that, right? The interviews are recorded, audio taped, and that we are converting that into the word format or in the written format. That is the transcription, right? After that we can read by line, take first note, or even in that same paper itself we can write what is that entire paragraph is saying, or we can do a process called memoing, or we can have a small diary throughout our research. Then we can write what all the things, initial impression about that particular paragraph or that particular interview, or all together also we can write. So that process we call it as what? Memoing. Okay. So we will transcribe, get familiarized with the data by reading it and reading, then taking notes, or we can do the memoing also. Okay. Then after that only we will go for initial codings. What all thing? What is the code? What do you mean by code? Code is like a street sign. Okay. For example, this is a section of a paragraph, and we are giving certain street sign like signboard, like this experience. This is about that particular aspect, right? So coding is the street line or a label that capture what is interesting about the data. such as it can be an action, or it can be a role, or it can be an opinion. We have to be unbiased, and we have to stay close to the data, what exactly that it is. Okay, and do not rush into the development of theme in the beginning. Better to code first, then it can be done by inductive coding, or it can be done by priori coding. Inductive coding means that within the data we are coding it, we are developing that code. But sometime the researcher can have a list of code before itself, then we can see whether it is fixing whether that codes are matching with the already having the list. So inductive coding means the researcher will have from the data they are making the codes at that particular point itself. But sometimes what we can have, if we have a freedom there also, we have a prior list of codes. From that list of codes, we can again match with from our data, we can check whether it is matching. So the coding can be done by priori coding or the inductive coding. So what to be coded, and that is the question. If it is repeated in several places, that can be coded. Okay. Or if that is some findings that really surprise you, that also can be coded. And if the participant is saying that this is the most important thing I faced when I got COVID positive, or this was the most traumatic thing it happened to me, or if the participant is saying like that to you, then that can be coded. Or if you have read some of the article before and that is exactly matching with this our finding, that can be coded, because that will help for us in discussion also writing. Reminds you a theory. If any of the participant response is reminding you a theory, that also we can code. Sometimes if it is answering directly our research question, in that case also we can code the things. So let's see. This is an example of an initial coding. The governor is a great believer in health and fitness. He is a bit of a fitness fanatic himself. What is the code we have given? Governor support health activities. Okay, so while reading the verbatim, we are giving our initial impression about what is that main thing. Or we have the third lowest sickness rate across the whole country. That means what? The low sickness rate. That is what we have coded. Or we can, many things we can there. Let's have some example of this. I request you to code this, okay? Initial coding, a single word to given a full text. That is what you have to do here. So a single word to a full sentences to the text. When my mother-in-law came to know I have HIV, she used all sort of names and she called me a woman of a bad character. Can anyone give an initial code to this thing?
Prostitute.
Anyone, please? Any one sentence, one word, single word to represent
Prostitute.
this full sentence.
Prostitute.
Prostitute. Stigma or
Blaming.
Okay.
Characterless.
Characterless. Okay. So what I called it is an insult. I'm not saying you people are wrong, because it's subjective. Once you read, that is your code. So when I read, this is what I felt. Okay. So that's what it is, subjective in nature, the qualitative research, right? So this is one initial coding we can do. Hope you understand how we are doing initial coding. Let's take one more example. You have to give two or different code for this thing. It's applicable to a single qualitative data, and the line in the hospital was long. There were some patients behind me. The nurse who knows my status told me to come last in the line, and it was hurting. The man next to me panicked and moved away as he saw the nurse's behaviors and my skin rashes. Same study on an HIV patient lived in experience, and how we will code this. I request you all, if you can code one or two different codes, initial codes we can take.
Rude behavior.
Role of a nurse.
No, rude behavior.
Rude nurse. Okay. Rude behavior of a nurse. Fine.
Angry.
Alert.
Stigmatization.
Again, stigmatization we can code. Or any other? discrimination we can quote. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, so entire summarizing the behavior and the perception of the other people. Okay, and discrimination. Okay, the rude behavior of the nurse. That all the thing we can have a code for this initial code for this entire this section. Clear? I hope you understood what we are trying to do in an initial coding. Okay. So after that, after initial coding of all the interviews, you may have a long list of codes like this, like what we did. Then what is the next step? We have to merge that code, or we have to categorize that code. Okay, then only we can at least we reach into the development of the themes. So we have a long list of code, then merging and collecting the codes into the development of a theme. That is the next step we have to do. So this is one thing one of the study conducted among the prisoners, and there were so many lists of these initial codes with them. Okay, so being locked up, time slows down, worrying, behind your boarding or bang up, so no social contact, always lying in the bed, muscle soreness. These are all the things what we found. So what we can collectively say, at the end we can give a one code for entire this thing. That can be like bang up. Okay. So what I said, we are categorizing them, or we are trying to merge the codes. That is the next step. Categories can be like stigmatizing behavior. Okay, main codes. Under this we can again have a subcategories too. Stigmatizing behavior from the hospital. Okay, or they may be from the family members. Like that also we can have a subcategory also in the initial codes. So whatever we have initially get familiarized with the data, read it, then try to memo it. Memoing we can do, or making a small notes, then try to have an initial coding. And if we, after a long list of coding, what we can do, we can categorize categorize if it is possible. Finally, we can make a network, or we can again review, and if it is possible, better to develop a thematic network too. So generate a thematic map or a network of the analysis and check with themselves in relation to the coded thing. Okay, for example, in this thing also you are finding, okay, what students want from the feedback, that they have analyzed. Okay, they have used different thing and they have made a network for it, connecting all the codes and like this. Okay, one more thing I will show you in our study what we have done in that. This is a network we have developed after the COVID-19 with their experience. What was the network? Before being diagnosed as a COVID positive, okay, and then during the COVID-19 infection and post recovery. That were the major category we made. From that we have tried to connect all the codes and all the themes, that we made a thematic network at the end. So we will also, that is also good to have a thematic network after the development of the theme. Then we can define theme, what that exactly the theme means. The ongoing analysis is to refine the specific of each theme, and what is that each theme is meaning we can say, or what is the essence of that particular theme, that we can define, and explaining the connection between the themes or the category. If you develop that also we can explain. For example, in the same study, the theme before being diagnosed with COVID-19, first theme was impact of COVID-19. Okay, in the below that we have described what is the meaning of that impact of COVID-19. That is what we have defined the theme. Then we have some type of sub theme. Then we have supported with the patient's verbatim. So what we have, before being diagnosed as a main section, then we have a theme, we have defined the theme, then sub-theme, supported with the verbatim. Like that we can do. And finally, we have to produce the report. So finally we can make an entire report with all the what that the report writing is, there is no much difference. It is usually like the other thing, right? There is no much difference. We can have it the introduction, methodology, that all the parts are same only. The selection of a vivid relation back to the analysis to the research question, literatures, and we can finally produce the report and submit into the journals or wherever you require that you can do. So the purpose was to make you understand what is the thematic analysis. So if I go back, if we ask you, you got an idea that what is coding? Like a straight line mark, we are giving some tag for each section. From the code, we have long list of codes. We can merge those codes or we can categorize it. Then we can develop theme. After theme development, we have to define the theme, and then that we can even define or refine the theme also we can do. If possible, try to develop a thematic network. Okay, that will also really support your findings and support your writing. And then finally, we can produce the report. So this is an essence of almost all type of qualitative research, the basic thematic analysis. That is what we are doing. There are other analysis for also, but as a basic researcher, it is better to understand what we are doing in a main thematic analysis. So we have, when we go detail into the other parts and all, you will get more that whether other ways of analysis too. But in the beginner, we better to do with a simple thematic analysis that can be done. So I will touch upon few more slides about some other approaches or other types of qualitative research. As I said in the beginning, we are dealing with the experiences or a non-numerical data or just a direct observation of our participants, right? So one of those approaches was the thematic analysis. That is a method which we are using in data analysis. But it is always better to understand what are some of the other approaches also available in or there in the qualitative research, like ethnography. Ethnography studies the culture. Okay, in-depth study of the culture or a facet of a culture, that is called an ethnography. So it can be a macro ethnography or it can be a micro ethnography. Macro ethnography can be broadly defined culture. For example, if you are studying the culture of about an Indian village culture, that can be a macro ethnography. If it is a micro ethnography or a focused ethnography, that means what? It is focusing on a particular needs. Okay, for example, Somali refuge, which is with visual impairment living in the UK. So we are focusing on a particular group and their thing, that can be what? Micro ethnography. Sometimes it can be an institutional ethnography. That means the study of the organization of professional service and the field of nursing or a social work or maybe a community health. For example, if I want, what is the communication pattern of Thames, New Delhi, or what is the communication pattern